up on bars, so
Okay.
maybe I'm just the furthest away from Marcy Carmen.
Maybe. Okay, well, I'll keep time. Marie Carmen asked me to keep time. So I think what we'll do is we'll go through each of the bullet points and we'll do one at a time. So everybody will do each bullet point and we'll go back and do the next. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll tell you what we'll do. And I'll just tell you what order we'll go in, if that's okay. So we can be efficient. So the first one says, briefly describe your physical or cognitive domain intervention assignment from lessons 11 and 12. So that'll be the partnerships. So Annie, do you and I want to go first?
Yeah,
we need to do. Okay, so we should take about 2 minutes for each group. So we'll go first. So do you want to start, Annie? Just say whatever you want, and then I'll just finish whatever you don't say.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we did on like promoting physical activity in children ages 6 to 11. And so we just, it was actually interesting. We just kind of went through decided to do a PowerPoint. And so that was interesting. Like I found just like how about it or how do you find out that the problem is you just
So I missed everything.
Are you there, Michaela?
Me?
Can I just keep going?
Yeah, just keep going. She'll figure it out. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll just keep going. Yeah, just how like mainly the kids just need an example from like their parents, and they need to be able to just have the opportunities. If the opportunity's there, then they will get their physical in. It's like if they have the opportunity at school with physical education, some schools are just doing it like once a week. Some schools don't even have the program, and other schools have it every day. And so I feel like there needs to be some sort of anyways, as long as they have that opportunity, then they'll be able to exercise. And then also family or friends or neighborhood, if they're doing physical activity, then the child will also be able to. I don't know how in depth
Question.
go on this.
Can you guys hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you. When I was
Did you get my chat thing?
No. If I were you, I would shut down your whole computer and completely restart your computer and then relog in again. See if that helps you. Because the rest of us are doing fine. So maybe just you want to restart your computer. Because you keep freezing and your audio is really bad. Like it sounds like a piano playing instead of talking.
Okay.
So try that. Okay, we'll keep going. So I did the project with Annie. We did that one. There were a lot of things that we can do to help kids be more physically active. Like she said, in the community, setting an example was a good one. Limiting screen time. Other things I found interesting were how we can, in the community, support parks being built and things like that to help kids be more active. Or bike paths, things like that. So the next group, I don't know if you want to wait for Michaela. Maybe you can go ahead and start without Michaela. You three worked together on yours, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys want to go ahead?
So I'll go first. We did ours on, oh my goodness, on the cognitive domain. And we did an infographic. We kind of found several different things that parents and communities can do to help children succeed in the academic arena. So I kind of stumbled upon a bunch of research about how family meal times really help children in school. more than parents helping them with their homework, more than outside hobbies and art programs, more than anything. If a family had meals together, students did much better on standardized tests and did much better in school overall. Let's see. We also talked about identifying and helping with children who have anxiety and getting involved in communicating with teachers and school officials. Mark,
Okay. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, we were in the same group, so our entity, we shared some steps in order to help children to feel less anxious, and we realized that the communication relationship with parents is something that helps a lot and has made mindful in the meal time that important because we share time together and they these meals promote communication. So communication is something that helps a lot in children, to children. And we talk about helping parents to recognize the signs of anxiety in their children. If you have anxious child, you know because you don't know what signs are. So we work out in providing this to parents so they can recognize anxious children. I don't know if Michaela wants to do something.
What? I only heard my name. That's it.
Sorry. We're
And you
discussing.
guys saying everything, I'm not gonna be able to read my paper because I can't understand what you guys are saying.
Okay, so it's being recorded, so
Okay.
you can go back and watch it.
Okay.
So whatever you can't hear, you can go back and watch. And some of it, all of us are not able to hear it. But you'll be able to watch it.
Yeah.
So we just went through the projects that we did together. So we'll go ahead and go to the next part. Each of us can explain the social emotional domain intervention that we researched this week and state whether we have actually implemented the intervention personally to address the problem, and if we have, how effective that intervention was, and if not, discuss research or other evidence assessing the effectiveness of the intervention. And each person should take about 4 or 5 minutes to do that. Okay, so I can go ahead and go first. I did bullying. Mine was kind of interesting. I looked at it from 2 different perspectives. Can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
Am I clear?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So I looked at it from the perspective of school, and I found this article that was really interesting. It was, let me watch the time. Okay, it's tapping into the power of school climate to prevent bullying. And their idea was that to prevent bullying, you change the whole climate of the school. Instead of being punitive, punishing that kind of behavior, so if someone's pushing and shoving, instead of punishing that, make an environment where that kind of thing is not acceptable, where it doesn't happen. So some suggestions they had for changing the whole climate of the school was to have, they said the most effective environment was high on adult control and caring. So the students needed to see that the teachers and administrators in the school care, and that it's fair. And they need concrete and school-wide discipline plan that provides structure and support for all of the students. They kept emphasizing having caring relationships, fair and supportive relationships with the adults and the peers in the school. So it was really about the climate of the whole school, supporting everything. They also talked about some policies in the school that could help to make sure that it's a bully-resistant climate. their main focus, like I mentioned before, was it said to implement universal strategies that would emphasize prevention, which I kind of said before, and address the underlying causes of behavior. So an example they used was if you see a problem with kids shoving in the hallway frequently, the universal intervention would be to make it so that the hallways aren't so crowded, so to reduce the flow of congestion. So that is avoiding that problem of the pushing and shoving in the hallway. Another thing they suggested was to establish school roles and develop clearly defined discipline processes. And again, not attacking the specific behaviors, but focusing on having an environment that is supportive for the kids. I think I work in schools, and I've seen some schools that have an anti-bullying campaign where the whole school is against bullying, and they support being kind to each other, and they have incentives to be kind to each other, that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that will help kids be less mean to each other. So another thing they said was research, the experience showed that the safe and protective climate was a deterrent to bullying behavior. So you'll see more bullying in a school where it's just the culture. It's just the culture in the school that the kids are mean to each other. So the other perspective I looked at was, what do parents do when their kids are bullying? So that was about what teachers can do and what administrators at schools can do when there's bullying. But then I looked at what parents can do, and I'm going to go through that quickly because I'm almost out of time. Just parents should acknowledge the behavior and talk to their kids about it. Don't pretend it's not happening, and focus on consequences. Make sure that it's clear that you don't accept that kind of behavior, and then be proactive with working with the school. Don't be embarrassed if the school tells you your kid's bullying. Just let them know you don't approve of that behavior and talk about how you can help them. And then they said, empower your kids to build their social and emotional skills by learning self-awareness, self-management, resilience, social agility, responsible. They suggest looking for after-school programs and extracurricular activities that can help kids develop positive relationships, and they focus on positive relationships. Does anyone want to volunteer to go next?
Me? Okay. Well,
Okay,
the last part we were talking about anxious children. So I looked for information about angriness, depression, because I found that angriness is a symptom of depressed children. So I looked for depression, and I found that the parent-child relationship is very important, because mothers with parenting affect the children's emotion regulation, and fathers' harsh parenting has an effect on child aggression. So angry children and aggressive children are due to harsh parenting. So one thing that we as parents can do is to be prepared with a different and a better child. And other things that I found is that there is a stress that is called a stress, and this positive stress are challenges that are helpful for children. And this is an example of this positive stress is waking up early to school, doing homeworks, tracking the Sunday school, obeying parental discipline, and performing with house chores. But the other side of the stress is the negative stress. If one child is not supported in order to feel, in order to, with intelligence, emotional intelligence, this child can develop later in adulthood alcoholism, depression, illicit drug use, smoking. I don't know how to pronounce it. So suicide, such sexually transmitted infections, intended pregnancies, and heart diseases. So this is very important to help a child if a child is becoming aggressive or if he's becoming very angry because this is a signal that he is being very stressed or depressed. So there are some symptoms that we as parents can know that our children need help. For example, there is emotional maladjustment, behavioral adjustment problems, cognitive dissonance, despair, frustration, anger, and powerlessness. And there are many social stressors. For example, the pressure that they feel in school, the anxiety that they feel when they have to present tests. There is other stressor that are parental pressures for higher performance, schoolwork and discipline, uh, classroom management procedures. For example, the classroom doesn't have good procedures and the teacher is not has not a positive relationship. It's something that will affect the children. So there are economic social stressors and interpersonal social stressors. For example, conflict with parents is something that is very important. And something that affects children is marital problems between parents or the death of a parent. They all lead to depression or angriness or symptoms of that kind. And um, so, so my conclusion is that what adults can do to avoid these factors of stress, depression, and angriness is to avoid family conflict and to help children or family members if they have a mental health problem. So we need to go with the psychologist or psychiatrist to receive the correct help. We have as adults to put an effort in order to be in order to do a better parenting style. For example, to become an authoritative parent or to become an emotion coaching parent. And we have to be careful with the teachers. If the teachers are very punitive or authoritarian, we have to talk to them in order to help your children, will our children. And these are the things that I found.
That's great. Thank you. That's good. Who wants to go next?
I
I can
can.
go next.
Oh, okay.
All right. Okay, so I did mine on children feeling included. And so I kind of asked around what schools are doing. So one local elementary school around here to help children feel included and feel that they have friends and that kind of thing is they have what's called a friendship club. And so at lunchtime, if anyone wants to feel like they want like more friends or want to be someone's friend, then they go to this little club and have little activities. And it sounds like there's kind of like a volunteer, like a teacher or a volunteer. I'm not exactly sure about what it is, but they kind of help run it and they have little activities that they can do during lunchtime to get to know one another. And at first, that kind of to me is like, well, wouldn't that? Because at my school, I remember in my middle school, we had something, it wasn't called the Friendship Club, but it was something different like that. And it kind of backfired where if like no one went to it because they were embarrassed about it if they didn't have friends, so no one went to it. And so, but it sounds like this one, it's doing great, and it's a huge club, and there's so many kids there. They just want to reach out and just be friends with everyone. And then my nephew, he lives in North Carolina, and in his school, they have a friend, and this is where at recess, if you don't have anyone to play with, then you sit on the bench. And which at first, because I can think if in my elementary school, if that happened, then I think it would have backfired too. But but in his school, like he told us, they're like, oh, how is that working out with your friendship bench? And he said it's great because he said there's sometimes lots of kids on it, and everyone knows if there's someone on the bench, you go and invite them to play with you. And so he said that there's been times when him and his friends had a soccer game going on, and they looked over and saw someone on the friendship bench. So they ran over and invited them to play soccer with them. And then he said some days he's even had to sit on the bench because he didn't want to play soccer that day, but he wanted to do something else. So he sat on the bench, and someone came over and asked him to play jump rope with him. So I thought that was really cool how as long as it's structured okay and that the kids are just understanding that we need to be nice to everyone. Because I feel like, I don't know, in our generation, it wouldn't have worked out like that.
Yeah.
But so I just think it's cool how schools, because this can be, obviously, they cannot feel included in their family or other things. I think it's neat that schools are trying to implement this ways they can create friendship. And then another way for teachers, I thought was, when I was just thinking about it and asking around, was if teachers did like small group projects or assignments, or if they kind of allowed group work. It's one thing if they just work with whoever, because then they're just going to work with their close friends. But I think it also helps sometimes to assign them to other people that they don't usually talk to, because that can also help them in feeling included, get to know other people in a as well. And then also, I don't know how long I've been going, but I'll finish. For families, I think as parents, we can just make sure that, obviously it's hard once you get a lot of kids, make sure that every child feels included. But as long as you have like a little one-on-one time, even if it's just as you tuck each kid in bed, you can just ask them about their day, or just let them know that they are individually loved and that they're important. So that was my research for the week.
Okay, great. That sounds really good. Thank you. Michaela, you want to go?
Yes. So as I put on the discussion board, I don't know if you guys look like you see that I have a topic, but I was doing it on. I didn't specifically say this, but kids that don't have good peer relationships are kind of like the same thing, more focused on because they have social deficits. Because the people that I interviewed, and I thought was interesting, because I worked with these types of kids all the time, they talked about how that's a problem for a lot of kids, but especially for kids that, because they worked in a resource room with kids that have learning disabilities and things like that. So the thing that I did, and it kind of comes, I can't remember if it was this class or the other one I'm taking two development classes right now. Did we talk about in this class, did we watch a video of a guy saying, like, giving specific things that you can do with kids that have social deficits? Is it this class? Okay, I'm assuming yes, I don't know, but.
Okay.
Ew, honey, I'm trying to talk. Sorry, guys. So I specifically focused on play dates and how they can help children in this area. And I found an article that was done in 2010. And they were talking about how playdates, there's many studies that show that playdates actually help kids have more friends and things like that. So also it went specifically into like, they use like mom reports to kind of do this study because play dates happen in the home, right? So they had questionnaires that they made that asked specific questions to gauge certain things. So like one of the things they gauged was how many times they had in-home visits and how many times they got invited to other people's places, because that kind of showed that they had friends that like good relationships because if they're being invited to the other home as well. If that makes sense. Like here it says that playdates in another child's home was significantly and positively correlated with the following behavior. So it was showing how it affects them in other areas. So it helped them have better schoolyard, like recess manners, better social behaviors, they offered objects like sharing, better talking and communication, and things like that. So that was one part of it. There's many things in this article. It was really fascinating. Scanning. Okay, and then so this one kind of talks about how moms can be a big impactor, obviously, in this area, and making sure that you have play dates for your children. This is something that I thought was kind of interesting that maybe kind of relates to bullying, because it said children with more friends or happier at school, have fewer adjustment problems, are more pro-social and less likely to tease others. So I thought that was interesting. So in this study that they saw through their questionnaires, they saw that when conflict was, like when lots of conflict happened in a play date, that made it so they didn't have as many friends, which makes sense, right? So then from this study, they kind of created a program that helps focus on helping kids work through conflict, and it showed to be very beneficial for helping them in that area. So I thought that was cool that they kind of saw an area that they could work on, and they kind of sent that to like the clinical areas, help them with that. Because, sorry, another part, I don't know how long I've been going either. Another part of it, part of the study is they took kids that were going to like a professional for help, so for their problems. This one focused on kids with autism, autism, and then they took kids from just the community, and so that's how they saw the difference. The kids with autism actually had more conflict, so they saw that that's how they could help the children in that area. So, and then another article, I'll just sum this up because I think I'm almost out of time, that I found was by a doctor, anyway, she did lots of research for child development, and she kind of had this thing of strategies to help your child navigate like the play date, make it a good play date. And I'll just tell you a few things she said. Talk to the children about the play date before, kind of discussing like you should share, take turns, or being a good friend. And make a visual schedule of what the activities will be, so especially if you have children that have hard times with changes in your routine. So that would really help, especially kids with autism or other kids that have social deficits. And also, if you're the parent, don't be afraid of the conflict. Step back and allow your child to try and work it out themselves first. I thought that was really interesting. Anyway, there's many others. I don't know if you guys want to hear more, but that's the 3 research things that I found.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's good. I like that. Okay, Michael, you want to go?
Yes, it's my turn. So for mine, I chose in the social emotional domain, communicating with our children as parents. And the reason I chose this is because in my interview with one of the teachers, she said that she teaches first grade, and she said that last week, the week before we had the interview, there was a little girl in her class who is usually really outgoing, just loves to learn, really smart, always, doing her assignments. And all of a sudden, this little girl just didn't want to do her assignments anymore. She just kind of sit there and stare off into space. And then one day she just randomly burst into tears. And so the teacher took her aside and said, "What is going on with you?" And this little girl, it came out that her mom had gone to Hawaii to get married, and that she was changing her name. And this little girl didn't know where she fit in with this new family. And the man that her mom was marrying had another little girl, and all three of them were going to have the same last name. And she wasn't. And I just thought it was really heartbreaking. And it's so important that we communicate with our children what is going on, especially with big life events such as, you know, marriage, divorce, death, illnesses, in a way that they can understand. And all of my research eventually came to emotional coaching. If we want to share with our children and communicate well with them, we need to be able to understand our own emotions and help them to understand their emotions. And so we can do that by validating their feelings. If our child, and you don't even need to necessarily agree when they come to you with their feelings. My daughter kept coming to me and saying things like, "I hate myself, I'm so stupid." And I didn't know how to respond to that. And eventually I learned that I just need to validate that and say, "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry you feel that way." And then say, "Let's talk about how we can change that." And sit down with her and talk about how we can change that. And that was actually one of the things I found in one of my articles, with how to connect to them and communicate with them. It's important to pay close attention to their emotions, and you can point out when they're having emotions. If they're angry, say, "Wow, you know, son, you seem to be really angry." And sometimes when you say that, something will click with them, and they will realize that that's how they're feeling, and okay, I'm feeling angry. And you can do little things with them to help them too. Like if you feel angry, you know, go in your room and take a break, or let's sit down and talk about how we can help you with this emotion. Let's see, what else did I find here? Another good way to communicate is to do things together. Again, family meals is important, doing chores together. Praising your child. We should praise effort over ability. Don't expect too much from them. Let's see. You can redirect, if they're misbehaving, you can redirect them. For example, they're arguing with a sibling. You can say, "Why don't you guys go outside and jump on the trampoline?" And sometimes that will help them to redirect their feelings and do something different. You should encourage emotional expression, but set clear limits on behavior. So let them be angry, let them be sad, but have rules on how they can express that. Like it's not appropriate to scream and yell and call someone stupid. If you're angry, let's sit down and talk about it. I think I'm going to end there because I'm sure I've been talking. Has anyone been looking at the time? Has it been 5 minutes? Sorry, I can't hear you. Okay. I just want to see if there's anything else here that I missed. Okay, I think that's all.
Okay. So the next thing we need to do is each of us need to take about 3 to 4 minutes sharing highlights from the domain interviews that you conducted with the caregivers during lesson 11. So I can go ahead and start if you want. We can go in the same order we just did for that thing we just did. So we'll take about 3 or 4 minutes each, maybe 3 minutes if we can manage. So I interviewed someone who is both women are mothers, and one of them is a primary teacher that works with children that are sunbeams. So I guess they're 3 and 4. And then the other one is a mother, and she's also worked as a teacher with children with special needs. So I talked to them about, it was kind of hard to get them to pick general risks and problems that people face. They really wanted to focus on the naughtiest kids they've had and the problems those kids have encountered. So it's kind of hard to get them away from that and say, well, in general, what are some problems that would apply to a wider audience than just that child? They found a lot of frustration when parents were uncooperative, when they would try to help the children or help the parents understand a problem the child was having, and the parents were in denial, or they would, it was just difficult to cross that line of, you know, your child has behavior that's really inappropriate, and the parent wasn't always accepting of that. So that was one of the risks, one of the challenges that they found interacting with parents, was helping the children get the help they needed, because the parents wouldn't, they wouldn't admit that there was a problem. But the age group was much younger than what most of you looked at. This was age 2 to 5. So once they get into school, they'll probably be repeatedly told, you know, your child has this problem, they need this intervention, and then maybe they'll listen. So that was just one thing that was unique about the younger age group. Marie Carmen, do you want to tell us about yours now, your interviews that you had?
Okay, well, the thing that I did is to let the parents know that they have to change the parenting styles. So if they are harsh to children, I suggested to take time with them. So I suggested to, rather than shout to the child and rather than setting limits, but in a harsh way, I invited them to listen to their children, to talk with their children, and to listen to their emotions, and to change the parenting style, because maybe, well, not maybe, the parenting style was damaging too much to that child. So now the parents are changing their styles, they are learning, and the child is having less symptoms. And actually, now the child is not like very sad. Now the child is trying to have a better relationship with the parents, and parents are doing a great effort in order to change some mistakes that nobody knows until one person that is not a specialist. I am not, of course, a specialist. I am just learning, but what I learned, I share with them, because I have a very, very good relationship with them. So this is something that they are doing. They are listening to their child, and they are preparing in order to change too much. Other thing that they were having is that they were having troubles in their marriage. Now they are doing things in a different way. So their family becomes better, because they understood that their marriage problems, their marital problems, were affecting the children. So they all are trying to change.
That's good, thank you. Let's see, Annie, you're next. Annie, you ready to tell us about your interviews?
Yeah. Sorry, my thing was muted. I just realized that.
Yeah.
Okay, so just kind of briefly go through with each one I did. With the first one, the parent was just explaining how they're having a problem with like their habits affecting their child's habits. And they went in, one of the examples they gave was that they have for instance, she said, I have a really bad sweet tooth. And so she was just saying how something simple like that, how she just really likes treats and eating candy and things like that. She was noticing how all of her kids, they all just want to do the same. They want to do the same as her. They just look forward to whenever she goes out and gets her treat because they all know that they'll get one too. Now she was just kind of worried, like, oh my goodness, I'm just starting this huge thing where it's not that big of a deal, but she was saying, I want my kids to be healthy and I want them to want healthier options rather than just a sweet tooth like that. Then let me look through my other one. Another one was this mom had a child who in kindergarten had really bad ADD, like he was diagnosed and everything, but the teacher just had zero tolerance for this child, which she said you could kind of see because this child was really hard to be around and couldn't sit still and had to sit up and run around and all these things, but the teacher would just punish him again and again and again. And eventually the child actually got hurt because of how the teacher was punishing him and because the student couldn't sit still, and he sliced his ear on the what's it called, like where the markers are for the whiteboard. And so the mom decided that she was going to start, volunteering in the classroom to kind of ease the students and the teacher and just to kind of explain that this child, he can't sit still and everything. And she just said it was hard as a parent to just see your child being different like that, but she wasn't going to just tell her child like, okay, you need to change, because she said it was a real problem. But I finally got the child on medicine even at that young, and so that she's like, it did help us get him on medicine because we realized it was a bigger problem. I thought that was interesting. That would be really hard. And then also, I guess it's kind of our last meeting was kind of similar to this interview about someone that had their child had speech problems, just how they were in denial about it, which is kind of similar to one of the people I talked to before. I don't know how long I've been going, but but it was just interesting to see how these parents, they didn't realize all this stuff until later on, and then they, as I was just talking with them, they wish they would have done something earlier, and how their example really shaped how their child either benefited or didn't benefit from whatever domain that they were talking about.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. Michaela, are you ready to share your experience with your interviews?
Yep. I liked, Annie, how you did it one with a parent. I never I interviewed, they decided to focus on the kids, so that was cool. So my two interviews, one I interviewed a lady that works on the bus as a bus aide. I don't know if your guys' systems have that, but our system does. I used to work on the bus as well. Anyway, the thing that she said was that she sees a problem for the kids on the bus is being left out. Like clicks specifically, how there are clicks on the bus and kids be left out. So she talked about some things that you could do. I'm just kind of looking at that. I don't want to get them mixed up. She was saying, like, their strengths are is that she sees that they rebound really easily, though, when something negative does happen. And she said that you can, she talked about the system that they have in the school. I don't know if your guys do it, if it's just the Rexburg thing, but they do a system called the Hello program. I don't know if you do that, but it's like, I think it's every month or so often. I don't know how often. They have all these signs that say hello, and like the bus drivers and aides wear hello shirts, and they have like a assembly kind of telling the kids what it's about, and basically it's kind of saying, say hello to a new person today, or ask them something about ask them something about themselves or things like that. And so each day they wear those shirts. The staff wears it at school. All the bus staff wears it. And she said that she's seen that help a lot with that problem. So she said that was really cooking. The next one was he works in a social resource room. So like kids that have learning disabilities and or mental disabilities. And his was, like I kind of mentioned, what led my research was that they have problems like social deficits and incompetence, I guess, and so that really affects them. He said they get along, like their strength is they get along really well with the kids in their class, but outside of that, they don't really get along very well with the kids if they don't want to know class or socialize. And he also suggested encouraging the parents to have kids over that are not in that room, so that encourage them to have new friends so that they can practice those social skills. And so, like I said, that kind of led my search on that way. Yeah, pretty well covers it. Hopefully I talked on it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Michael, are you ready to share yours?
Michael, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, so for my interviews, I talked to, like I said earlier, a first grade teacher, and then I talked to a vice principal of an elementary school. And it was really interesting because the first grade teacher works in a middle class elementary school, and the vice principal works in an area that has very low socioeconomic students. And so to see the differences between the risks and the interventions was very interesting. From the teacher, most of the risks come from parents not being educated or being educated enough to know how to help their children. Like with nutrition, they don't know how to get their kids active or what's the right amount of portion size, things like that. Or balancing time so that kids get enough sleep when they come to school ready to learn. On the other hand, the vice principal that I interviewed talked a lot about how there's risks of poverty, mom and dad not home because they're working 2 or 3 jobs to support their family, not enough health care, not enough parental involvement in school, and things like that. So that was very interesting for me to learn about the different risks that these children are facing and how parents and schools can intervene and begin programs that help to address these risks. Does that answer I'm not sure if there's anything else I needed from that bullet point.
They just needed you to share your interview, so I think that's fine. That's
Okay.
Good. Okay, so the last 15 minutes, we need to discuss the next 2 bullet points. So we probably all need to turn our sound on, our microphones back on. We need to attempt to identify common elements of effective interventions targeted to different problems in different domains. And then we need to conclude by sharing our best general insight or suggestion about effectively intervening to foster optimum development. So this needs to be a discussion.
Can we just focus on that first sentence? I think that might help.
Sure. So the first one
Because
is...
I got lost.
Okay. So the end, we'll just share our best insights. I'll go back to that. So attempt to identify common elements of effective interventions targeted to different problems in different domains. I think a lot of us, we covered some of the same things, so we found some things in common. So a lot of us talked about relationships and bullying and emotions. I felt a lot of those sort of overlap with our interventions and be relevant for all of them. So I think the idea of the friendship club and the friendship bench, and even what you mentioned about the Hello Club, all of those can help with the different problems and risks that we talked about.
I think maybe another thing that I saw as common was that they use more than just one area of support, I guess. So, like, yeah, parents are very highly involved, but also school is a big other part, which could extend to law and government because they can regulate what they can do and that. But specifically in this area of social, school and parents are very important.
One thing that a common element that I noticed is that if parents need to reach out and find these interventions in everything, and a lot of them overlap. So if the parents are communicating with the teachers in the schools, that will help with the child's emotional. It may also help with the child's physical and the cognitive. If the teacher says, you know, he's been falling asleep in school a lot lately because you have this good relationship with the teacher, then you know, okay, I've got to adjust something at home. So I think a lot of these overlap. So if you work on one thing, it will help with all of the domains. Does that make sense?
Yes.
In screen time, we discovered affects every single domain: cognitive, physical, and social.
Okay, Marie Carmen, do you have anything to add?
Yes, something that I see in common is that parenting is very important for children. For example, in the case of bullying, we first have to teach our children to respect others, and we have to teach them to be surrounded by children that respect them. And other thing is that we have to, so parenting is very important because parents have to listen to their children in order to promote a development. So parenting style is something that is extremely important. So I think that this is something common. And for example, if the parent has a good relationship with the child, this child can feel secure, so this child can have friendship. Otherwise, if the child doesn't know how to talk to their parents, the child won't know how to talk with to other children, and the child will struggle with friendship, having friendship, talking and going, or if the parent style is a harsh one, so the child is going to be harsh with other children and is going to be rude. So I think that parenting styles are the clue to a good development.
That's a good point. That's something I think we all agree on that. Michael touched on that too, that parents have a huge impact on influencing their children for good or for bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's conclude by sharing our best general insight or suggestion about effectively intervening to foster optimum development. I think that probably the most important thing I learned for effective intervention for optimum development is that it should include all of the caregivers working together. So whatever, teachers, daycare providers, parents, everyone should be working together to make sure they're all on the same page and that they all understand the issues that are present. Sometimes a teacher may not understand the background of the child's behavior, but communicating with the parent can help them understand what the teacher can do to begin the best kind of intervention. So I think there needs to be a working relationship between the parents and the teachers or caregivers, other caregivers, babysitters, daycare provider, preschool teacher, whatever is there. I think that's probably the most important insight I gained. It's just that we need to work together. Does anybody else have any insights they want to share?
Mine was pretty much the same as yours, that we need to communicate that if we know what resources we have, there's a lot of resources that I learned that schools and the school district that I live in provide to help parents raise healthy, intelligent children and help them to reach their potential and to learn and to grow in a good way. Like, I think everybody here touched on communicating with a different aspect. We talked about schools, we talked about peer relationships, we talked about, having a good communication with teachers. Family involvement is also a good strength that I learned while doing the interviews. Extended family can be a good resource and a good strength for helping children grow. So I think just education and communication for parents, and parents usually have the desire to help their kids the best they can. And so I think if we can educate parents and communicate with each other, that it's the best way to have healthy kids, healthy, happy kids.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's great. Anybody else want to share? Looks like Michaela left. Marie Carmen, did you have any insights that you wanted to share?
Well, I think that are the same well, for me, this assignment has been very useful because I have seen in myself that I have to change my parenting style, that I have to remember to be with my children. So this helps me, and I feel like I want to share all that I am learning to all the parents that have the children in the same age as me, for example. Well, that's it. For me, the thing that I am learning the most is that I am very important in how I parent my children is very important, as well as having a good relationship, a good marital relationship. This is quite important because both parents are important for children development. So this is one insight that I have and that I want to share with others, that marital relationships and parenting styles are quite important.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I will just finish off by giving oh, Michaela's there.
Sorry, I was getting something for my son, and my computer didn't even warn me, and it shut off. So I'm sorry.
Okay, do you want to share any insights that you? We just shared our insights or suggestions that we learned about effectively implementing interventions to foster optimum development. So, did you hear any of our conversation?
The last thing I heard was like just closing up with what Marie Carmen said about parents being really involved. I think that's the last thing I heard.
Okay.
I'm sorry that it cut out.
No, you're fine. So Michaela shared a little, or Michael shared a little bit about parenting being important and finding appropriate resources. And anyway, so do you want to share your insights?
So sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll read it. Okay. Conclude by sharing your best general insight or suggestion about effectively intervening to foster optimum development. So basically, what did you learn about effectively intervening? Yeah. Effective intervention.
I'm thinking here. I. I mean, I don't know if it's just repeating what we talked about, but I think really just having a good relationship with all the, like, it really lies on the parent and having good relationships with other areas because, I mean, like, teachers might see it at school, but they also have 30 other kids, things like that. So a parent is very important because they are the ones that see them every day and they can help see these things sooner than other people. I don't know if that's answering that.
Exactly. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what people said too. But really, I think it a lot was parent involvement because if they're not, they're the main sources that it needs to come from.
Yeah, exactly.
And teachers can't involve, like, they can do certain things at the school, but they can only intercede to a point or interrupt to a point or whatever.
Right, they can only do so much.
Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement with that. Does anyone have any final comments before we give a summary? Okay, I will give a 2-minute summary then. I'll summarize the highlights from our conversation. So we talked about our various projects and our interventions. I think a lot of the interventions we just talked how they overlapped. The interventions overlapped and the risks and problems kind of overlapped. So we talked about how some things that work with one risk or problem will help with other risks and problems. So addressing one issue can help address more than one issue. And let's see, we all agreed that parents have a huge influence on their children and that they have a big responsibility to make sure that their kids get the information that they need. Sometimes it might be the teacher that identifies the problem, but the parents need to make sure they follow through and make sure that the intervention happens. And parents should not underestimate their influence. Let's see, we also talked about making sure that parents are aware of the resources that are available. They may not know that if their child has something like ADD or ADHD, that there are resources in the school that can help them. They can get an IEP plan or have different plans that they can get set up to help the kids get what they need. So it's important for teachers and administrators to make sure the parents understand what resources are there to help the kids get the help that they need. And a lot of times, we also talked about how more than one system is needed to help the child. So the parent alone may not be able to implement the most effective intervention. They may also need the help of the teachers, and the teachers alone may not be able to implement the most effective intervention. It should come from the whole system, the school, the community, the parents, the church, everywhere the child needs to go. They can all work together to help the kids have the best outcome. I think that's the end. That was great. Anyone have anything to add?
Can you guys hear me? Looks like my screen froze.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to say thanks. I learned a lot from you guys being in my group this year, or this semester.
You're right.
Feels like it.
It's been great.
Yeah, sorry for my technology. I even practiced and everything before, and I don't know what's going on. But
It's okay. It happens. We can't control it.
yeah, and then my son, he can take me out, but of course it's not on the day I'm supposed to do something. But I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's fine. Okay, that was good. Well, good luck, everybody, on your final assignments.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, so Marie Carmen, are you planning to submit this to the teacher? Are you going to submit this to the teacher, Marie Carmen?
Yes, I'm going to submit the link. And do you want to submit all the resume? How do you say the summary about this? Because I think that this is individually that we each one of us has to write one paragraph about what each one of us have. But I don't know if this is individual work or if this is group work. If this is a group, I can do it. Um, but I think that this is individual. So please help me to understand.
So the paper we have to write is separate. So we each
Yeah.
have to write that ourselves.
Yeah.
So we just need
Okay.
you to put this in the Dropbox, submit this, and it might be good to tell the instructor where it starts, because I know you started recording before we started. We probably had 15 minutes recorded. So maybe watch back and see where we started our conversation. And then
Okay.
also, he probably wants to know where our summary starts.
Uh-huh.
So that's where I started talking my 2-minute summary at the end.
Okay.
That's what we had to do in a previous one. So maybe you could do that.
Okay,
you-
I share the link and I write the minutes where the talk starts and I'll do it.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have one more question.
Okay,
And it might be a dumb question. I just am not very good at online stuff. When you submit it to the Dropbox, will I be able to watch it from there as well?
right. So, how would that work?
I think you
Or can you send me the link again, like just through email? Or
I can, when I finish the transmission is already recorded in my channel, so I can share the link in the discussion board for all of you
okay,
and
that'd be great.
to look again, to watch again the video. You can do it, but I just need to wait some minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
to be ready. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
that'd be good if you could do that.
Well,
Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody.
bye bye.
Okay,
Bye.
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 Good luck on finals.
Good luck, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Ay, y luego, pues ábranle.